We're going to create a new document and place text, and then format it. So I'll choose File, New Document. I'll leave it on my letter 1 inch, which is 8.5 by 11, 1 column, 1 inch margins with facing pages off. If you don't see bleed and slug at the bottom, click More Options, and I always do 1/8 of an inch bleed and 1 inch slug for notes. And I'll click OK. To get text in, I'll choose File, Place, or in my head I always say Drop in Picture or Drop in Text, because the shortcut is Command D or Control D to drop. And I'll go to the desktop on the left, and I'll double-click the Assets folder, and all of the text files we'll be getting will be in the Text Files folder that's in Assets. And we're going to be placing, to begin with, some chapters from the book Sherlock Holmes. So I'll start with this Chapter 1 and click Open. InDesign shows me the first few lines or the first paragraph, and if I move to where the margins meet, my cursor will change from tiny black in the upper left corner to white, indicating I'm on a guide. And one quick click will pour the text in, filling the margins. But here's a note. Down in the lower right corner, I see a red plus sign, and down in the lower left, I see I have one error. This red plus sign indicates we have overflow or overset text. Not all the text that is in this text file is fitting on page 1. And if I click the Pages panel, I could see we only have one page. Let me show you my favorite placing text tip. I'm going to undo the place, and I call this the Shift-Click trick. If you hold down your Shift key on your keyboard, you'll see the cursor changes to a bent arrow. And if I move to where I see white when I'm directly on the pink and purple guides, when I hold down Shift and I see white and click once, InDesign knows that I need 13 pages to pour in all of this text. And if I click once on the text box, if I have View, Extras, and text threads are already showing, it says Hide now because they're showing, so I won't choose this. When I click once with the selection tool on the text box, I can see technically Adobe calls this the Out port, where text is flowing out of page 1 to the In port on page 2. And then it continues on that way to accommodate all of the text. Now let's format a bit of the text. I'm going to double-click to get inside, and I'll do a Select All, Edit, Select All, but normally I prefer to use Command A or Control A. That's a shortcut that works in every computer program. Once the text is all selected, I'm going to choose the font Adobe Garamond Pro, which is one of the ones that ships with InDesign. And even though it starts with A, it's in the G section for Garamond. So there it is. In fact, looking at my type menu, anything with an O next to it is OpenType, a newer font technology. It means you get the exact same characters when you go between Mac and Windows. In the past, if I designed on the Mac and I brought an InDesign file over to my PC, bullets would change to the Japanese yen symbol because the character mapping was different. But once I moved to completely OpenType or fully cross-platform font technology, my bullets are exactly the same, no character switch going between Mac and Windows. And the same InDesign file will work identically on both platforms if you use the fonts with O's next to them. The TT stands for TrueType, which was a great technology for its time, but will have issues going between Mac and Windows. And there's a third technology which I'm not sure if I have installed. There'll be a Red A. Red A is Adobe PostScript, and I don't think I have any of those left around anymore. Adobe PostScript was the language of all high-end output devices, and what I used to use for my first 15 years or so in the printing industry. But I'm going to go back to the G section to Adobe Garamond Pro and choose Regular. And there you'll see my text is changed. And I always prefer, instead of double returns between paragraphs, using the paragraph formatting controls on the top and assigning a space after. With space after, I can do 2/10. I'll type 0.2 and hit return or enter, and InDesign will add mathematically 2/10 of an inch between every paragraph so I can separate them. This is how all high-end layouts should be done, either using space after to indicate a mathematical amount of white space after a paragraph, or space before, a mathematical amount of white space before the paragraph. And if I look on page 13, if I double-click, you'll notice I have overflow or overset text because of the added white space. The beauty of space after is I can tighten this a bit by hitting my down arrow here next to space after. So as I hit down arrow, it gets a little bit tighter, but I want a decent amount of space there, so I'll leave this value of 0.1875. In fact, if you like complete round numbers, you could change this to whatever you'd like. You don't have to exactly match my screen. My settings are just a guide. But let me show you how to add a page and pour in the overflow text so that everything fits. To create text threads or links, I go to my selection tool. And if this box isn't selected, this would be deselected. If it was not selected, I could click once on it to see the blue points at the corner, the handles, and then click once on the red plus sign, and that loads the overflow or overset text into the cursor. In the Pages panel, yours may be shorter or longer, and I do have on in the Pages panel, in the panel options, View Pages, and horizontally, so I can fit more on the screen. But at the bottom of the Pages panel is the tiny Create New Page button. I'll click that once, move to where my pink and purple guides meet until I see white, and click again. And it needed more than one page, so let's use our Shift-Click trick. So I'll undo this, and now I'll hold down Shift and click again, and that Shift-Click trick can be used at any point. So now I have 17 pages. I'll save this document as Holmes Chapter 1, and I'll just do CH for chapter and O1 for 1. In fact, I never use spaces because if you haven't noticed, spaces are often replaced with 3 characters if you email a file, %20. So using underscore is a safer, more web-compliant habit. And I'll just save it right to my desktop for now. And this has been your tour of placing text, using the Shift-Click trick for autoflow, changing the font, and changing the space after to get white space between my paragraphs, and finally adding new pages through the Pages panel and linking the overflow text so that it pours into new pages. Work through this video once or twice and you'll really get a good handle on pouring in text with the Shift-Click trick and grabbing that overflow or overset text and adding a new page and Shift-clicking again to get all the pages you need to fit everything in the new style.